So at the start of Season 2 of Andor, we see Cassian steal an experimental TIE fighter, and I figured today we'd take a closer look at that TIE fighter in particular and talk about what that TIE variant is supposed to do. Let's talk a little bit about what has officially been named as the canon version of the TIE Avenger. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So the TIE Avenger, and yes, it has been identified as the canon variant of the TIE Avenger, is a fairly interesting starfighter because it fits a lot of different roles, and I figured today we could take a closer look at sort of what those roles are, and perhaps what the Empire was planning on using this prototype starfighter for, and what role it might have filled in the Imperial Military. But before we get into that, let's start this the way we start all of our ship videos, and talk about the numbers. At 13.4 meters long, the TIE Avenger is about the average size for a standard TIE fighter, which is surprising because it's significantly more capable, and you'd think it'd be a little bit larger, but realistically it's about the same size. It likely weighs a lot more than a regular TIE fighter, but in essence, it is not that much larger physically. We don't know much about its propulsion systems. We know that it's got two rear-mounted engines, and it does have a hyperdrive, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we don't know the class of hyperdrive or the kind of engines. But when we talk about weapons, that's where things get interesting, because this thing is bristling with weaponry. For starters, there's the twin laser cannons that form the fighter's primary armament. There's also a pair of rotary laser cannons. These are like little Gatling guns mounted on the side of the fighter. 16 independent missile launchers capable of firing homing missiles that can home in on both air and ground targets. And a heavy laser cannon mounted on the bottom of the fighter's cockpit, which can rotate a full 360 degrees and fires a fairly capable projectile. Interestingly, while this TIE fighter is designed to be crewed by only a single individual, it can carry 2 passengers, which is rather interesting and brings up a lot of questions that we'll talk about a little bit later. So we know that it was being designed by Sinar Fleet Systems during the events of Andor Season 2, and that it was built and based off of the TIE Advance, which is the starfighter we see Darth Vader using during the events of the Battle of Yavin, and we know that it had been his personal starfighter for quite some time. The TIE Advance was ultimately considered to be a success by Sinar Fleet Systems, and while it would not be accepted into primary use, it was still a very successful fighter nonetheless. So the idea of making a modified variant of it for potentially a wider use is understandable, and this is definitely a substantial improvement in capability. So let's talk about what this fighter could have been used for. Well, for starters, the 2 transport seats lead me to believe that it was designed for either VIP transportation or escorts for both ground and space operations. For example, let's say you had a VIP you were transporting from one point to another. They themselves may be on a Lambda shuttle, but imagine them being escorted by a pair of these fighters that could have a pair of Royal Guards on them as well, that could land and deploy those guards ahead of the shuttle to secure an area for that shuttle to land. That's one very specific use case, of course, but that was the first thing that came to mind. It's the 2 jump seats in the back that really kind of throw me for a loop. After all, this is a very big interior for a TIE fighter as well. But its weaponry lead me to believe that it's almost designed more like a gunship. The heavy homing missiles and the rotary cannons are remarkably destructive against ground targets, and the fact that this vehicle can hover in place, which is pretty standard for Star Wars starfighters, leads me to believe that it was perhaps designed with the idea of being used as a gunship, possibly a replacement for the LAAT, which was so successful with the Republic during the Clone Wars. Adding to that gunship role could be those 2 jump seats as well. Perhaps the idea was it could still transport a few troops, but at that point, you'd rather use that space for something else. 2 additional soldiers aren't going to really tip the scales of a battle, especially the way the Empire uses personnel. They just kind of throw masses of troops at something, so 2 additional stormtroopers aren't going to really make that much of a difference. We can look at it as a gunship, but the 2 jump seats do throw that off a little bit. Ultimately, I still can't really figure out the exact role for this starfighter, but there's a few other things that are worth mentioning. It has a hyperdrive, which is very rare on TIE fighters, especially at this point, with only a few variants of TIE fighter having their own built-in hyperdrive. These are the TIE Advanced and the TIE Reaper. That would allow it to fill a transport role or perhaps a scouting role, being sent ahead of a fleet to clear out minor obstacles before a larger fleet arrives. That would be a potential use for its hyperdrive. So far we have potentially a very specific use case for VIP transportation, a broader use case as a gunship, and a fairly broad use case as a scout ship ahead of a larger fleet, thanks to its hyperdrive and significant armament. Ultimately, the TIE Advanced here is a fascinating piece of Sinar engineering and does a good job being an improvement over the existing TIE fighters and even over the TIE Advanced and the TIE Advanced V1 that we see used by the Inquisitors. It's a very capable ship that shines in a gunship role, is pretty decent against both air and ground targets, and is shown to be remarkably maneuverable with the added ability to carry 2 passengers, which is almost overkill for a TIE fighter. And while we can sit here and debate all day what role it was intended to fill, it's still very interesting to see the Empire developing this kind of vehicle when it is so contrary to the Empire's strategy of mass amounts of fairly cheap vehicles and large numbers of infantry. Still, it's interesting that this came out of Sci-Fi Fleet Systems, and if you'd like to know more about Sci-Fi Fleet Systems and some of the other ships they built, I'll leave a link up here to a video I put together all about that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments what you think this fighter was designed for. Do you think it was designed for scouting roles, or as a gunship, or do you think I was onto something with that VIP transport theory? Or do you have some other use that this fighter might have filled? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.